Auricle, and we are starting the core of neuroanatomy. And this is a second class. And in yesterday's class, we had done a little bit about the CSF production and blood-brain barrier. And now we are entering to the actual, field of neuroanatomy, in which it's all about correlations, it's all about applying logic, and it's all about getting a proper orientation as to where exactly the structures are present and how the structures are organized. Okay. And I hope all these classes, the entire series of neuroanatomy that we are doing, is helpful to you. And I'm sure that you will be able to understand and clear a lot more concepts. And we here at Oracle, we offer you live classes, recorded sessions, notes, and MCQs. Live classes will be having an educator who will come online, and you can talk to them, you can interact with them, you can get your live doubts clarified live. In recorded sessions, the topics will be taught in much more detail, and if you haven't understood anything in the live sessions, you can always go back to recorded lectures and watch it. And you have notes which are based on the CBME curriculum, and also the MCQs which will help you in the upcoming next examinations, right? And all of this is based on CBME curriculum, and combination of this will definitely help you to stay on track. And we have the best feature, best of all, I think, is the personalized counseling sessions, in which you will be given a mentor, and your mentor will be like your buddy, will be like your friend, and who will help you with everything. You have any academic doubt, you have any non-academic concerns, or even if you have anything and everything that you want to share with your mentor, and they will be with you, they'll analyze your strengths, your weaknesses, and they'll help you ace through the examinations. And this is what we are planning to do, and this is the series of classes that we are planning to do. And today will be for the 9th March, it's the brainstem and the midbrain. And yes, let's start with the anatomy of the brainstem. Okay, now guys, before we begin, let me just give you a brief overview of how the human brain looks like, right? We have sensory and motor tracts, correct? The ascending tracts are sensory tracts. The descending tracts are motor tracts. This we all know, the basic knowledge. The whole purpose of having different parts of brain is to, number one, get the information from the periphery meaning from other parts of the body, integrate it, decode it, and send a proper instruction back, send a command back. So your brain is like a command center, right? Your brain, especially the cerebrum, is like a command center, which will receive inputs from different parts of the body. It will analyze it by the information that it already has, or it may learn new information, and it will finally give an output. For example, I want to run. A tiger is chasing me, and you have so many reflexes that are coming into picture, right? I am seeing, that means there is some visual activity going on. I can hear the tiger from behind, so something, my auditory cortex is also firing up, and my entire body is filled with cortisol now, so the sympathetic nervous system is also firing, and my muscles are contracting. So all of this integration is actually happening in the cerebral cortex. So now we have different areas of brain that will come together, that will bring all of this information together and help us to give an output. The output could be anything. The output could be just me sitting here and talking to you or teaching you. The output could be somebody running when a tiger is chasing. So this is the whole point. The whole point of having different structures in the brain is to identify and integrate the information in the form of sensory tracts or motor tracts. Sensory take the information up, motors bring the output down. That's it. Now, to do this precise function of integrating this information, we have what is called as brain stem. Brain stem. So brain stem is nothing but structure that is located between the cerebrum and the spinal cord, right? We have the cerebrum, who is the master. When we have the spinal cord, something that connects the two is the brainstem. We have so many different areas of brain that are there for this precise function, connecting different areas so as to give me a proper output. Now, this brainstem consists of midbrain, pons, and medulla oblongata. Brainstem is a whole structure. Okay, it is an entire structure that consists of three structures, like three divisions, in which the first division is the midbrain, second division is the pons, and the third division is the medulla oblongata. Okay, whenever somebody talks to you about brainstem, they are essentially talking about all three structures. If they want to pinpoint at any particular structure, they will have to be precise. If, let us say, I'm talking about brainstem syndromes, they can be midbrain syndrome, they can be pontine syndrome, they can be medullary syndromes, right? So midbrainstem as such consists of three structures in this particular order. First we have the midbrain, then we have the pons, then we have the medulla oblongata, and then the spinal cord, which continues further down as spinal cord. Now, the brainstem acts as a conduit for the ascending and descending tracts connecting the spinal cord to different parts of forebrain. So what happens is, let's say I have a burn in my hand, or let's say I've cut my hand. Now, whatever the signals, the pain signals, or the when I want to remove my hand from a danger, there'll be a signal that will be given to the muscle in the form of asking it to contract. And all of these signals, whatever the signals that are coming, will be taken from these peripheral nerves to the spinal cord. From the spinal cords, these tracts start to rise up. They reach the medulla oblongata, then they reach the pons, then they reach the midbrain, then they reach the thalamus, then they reach the cerebral cortex. While coming back from the cerebral cortex, again they take the same path. From the cortex has analyzed what information has come. It may be a burn, it may be a small cut. It has analyzed the information. Now the job of the cortex is to tell this small hand, over here, to lift it up or to close it while it is bleeding. So that is the output. That is the output that the cerebrum wants to give. Now, how the signal is going to come down is through the same pathway. From the signal, it enters the midbrain, then the pons, and the medulla oblongata, then the spinal cord. From here, the signals arise. Then they reach to the peripheral nerves. Through the peripheral nerves, it finally reaches the destination. So this is the pathway. In this pathway, one of the structures that I have is the midbrain. One of the structures I have is the pons and the medulla oblongata, and collectively they are called as brainstem. The whole purpose of studying this brainstem is to understand how this information is being passed from one structure to another, and how the output is being carried from one structure to another. That's the purpose of studying this entire brainstem. So, in that, to understand that, we need to understand how the cranial nerves come out, what different structures are present in brainstem, which will help in identifying these signals and integrate them. Okay, that is the whole purpose of the series of 3 classes that I'll be teaching brainstem. Right now, this is a very simple diagrammatic representation wherein what do we have over here is the cerebral cortex. In the cortex, we have the frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, and the temporal lobe. Then this is the corpus callosum, which connects the two hemispheres of the brain. Then I have the thalamus here, hypothalamus, and you can see the infundibulum over here, and the pituitary pouch as well. And this structure is what I call as the brain stem. And first we have the midbrain, then the pons, and the medulla oblongata, which continues downwards as the spinal cord. And this is the cerebellum, as you can see. And this is how I am looking at the brain. If I'm holding a brain like this and cut it into half, and I'm seeing the brain from this angle, okay? The picture that I'm seeing, I'm showing in front of you is sagittal section. What is it? I'm holding a cadaveric brain like this. I've cut it into half and I'm seeing from this angle, So this is what is a sagittal section, and this is how the brain looks in sagittal section. Okay. Yeah. So look at this, guys. This is the brainstem, in which the first part I'm showing is the midbrain, the second part is the pons, and the third part is the medulla oblongata, and this is the cerebellum. From all of these, I have the ascending and descending tracts, which will go into the thalamus, and all of us know thalamus is the relay station. From the relay station, it goes into the cerebral cortex. Okay. Now this is the structure of midbrain. This is the pons and this is the medulla, and this entire structure is called as the brain stem. Okay. Now let us start with midbrain. Let's start first with the midbrain. Now, how am I going to approach midbrain is by teaching you how the gross features of midbrain looks from the anterior view and from the posterior view. Okay, let us just imagine that this to be the midbrain. Okay, this is the midbrain. How am I going to study is I am going to tell you how the midbrain looks from anteriorly, that is the ventral aspect of the midbrain, how it looks posteriorly, and how it looks inside. Suppose if I take it out, this is just my powder box, how it looks inside. So this is how I will be approaching the midbrain. Okay. Now, first point is midbrain is something that connects the pons and cerebellum with the forebrain. What is forebrain? Cerebrum. What is midbrain? Something that connects the hindbrain to the forebrain, isn't it? So midbrain connects the pons and the cerebellum with the cerebral cortex. As you can see here in this diagram, you can see this is the cerebellum, this is the midbrain, this is the pons. What all the midbrain does is just takes all the signals it gets from the cerebellum and the pons and passes it upwards into the cerebral cortex. Okay. Yes. Now, midbrain anatomically passes through the opening in the tentorum cerebelli. So, what is tentorum cerebelli? You will answer me in the next class. I hope you know about this. There is, sorry, I hope you know about these structures, the tentorum cerebelli, and excuse me. And you will tell me in the next class about these structures, tentorum cerebelli. Okay, midbrain as a structure anatomically, it passes through the opening in the tentorum cerebelli. Okay, and the midbrain is traversed by a narrow channel, which is the cerebral aqueduct filled with CSF. Again, you will tell me cerebral aqueduct connects which two ventricles? Cerebral aqueduct connects which two ventricles? This is number one question. The second question is, what is tentorum cerebelli? What is tentorum cerebelli? And what other, what are the other, dura mater extensions of dura matters that you come across? And you will tell me what tentorum cerebelli is. Okay, two questions. Number one question, cerebral aqueduct connects which two ventricles? Number two, if you are talking about dural extensions, what is tentorum cerebelli? Two questions for you. Okay, now look at the structure of the midbrain, guys. This entire structure that I'm pointing over here is the midbrain, and this is the pons, and this is the medulla oblongata. And midbrain anatomically is traversed by the tentorum cerebelli, which is a dura mater extension. Now, as I said, how am I going to approach it? I'm going to be studying midbrain through two surfaces, right? Anteriorly, how it looks, posteriorly how it looks, and when I cut it open how it looks. That's all. Three different orientations, and we'll be done with midbrain. Now let us talk about the posterior surface of the midbrain. Okay. Now in the posterior surface, I have four colliculi called as corpora quadrigemina. On the posterior surfaces, I have four colliculi which are called as corpora quadrigemina. What are these structures? These are nothing but round eminences that are divided into superior and inferior pairs by a vertical as well as a transverse groove. What exactly I'm talking about? I'm talking about these four structures over here in the posterior view. How am I going to get to this posterior view? Suppose, let's say I'm holding a cadaveric brain like this in my hand. Okay. Now, if you in your dissection halls, you would have dissected the brain and you would have held it. I mean, I would say the most exciting part of studying anatomy, when you hold a cadaver's brain. So when you are holding the cadaver's brain, in the posterior surface, what you see is the cerebellum. Correct. Looking at the cadaveric brain like this, then if I reflect the cerebellum, if I remove the cerebellum, then what do I see? I see the diamond shaped fourth ventricle. Above the diamond shaped fourth ventricle is midbrain. Where is the fourth ventricle actually present? It is present in the pons. And above that is where the midbrain is. So when I'm looking at posterior surfaces like this, after I have removed the cerebellum, what am I seeing? Is what the posterior surface of the midbrain. In that view, what I see is actually the four colliculi, which are called as corpora quadrigemina. And these four colliculi are divided into two pairs by both vertical as well as horizontal grooves. You can see the grooves over here. And the superior ones are called as the superior colliculi, and the ones that are below are called as the inferior colliculi. Superior colliculi and inferior colliculi. Now, superior colliculi are centers for visual reflex. Inferior colliculi are lower auditory centers. Okay. Next, on the lateral aspect of the midbrain, I'm still talking about the posterior view. Now, if I, for example, if I have to show you that, let's say I have removed the cerebellum and this is the view. This is the posterior view. And on the lateral aspect, this aspect, I'm talking about the lateral aspect. Here you may see the corpora quadrigemina. And what is present over here is what I'm describing. Okay, I hope you have gotten the view. Suppose if you hold a cadaveric specimen in your hand, the brain like this, and you remove the cerebellum, now I am looking at the midbrain from the posterior view, imagining that this to be the midbrain. What do I see is the four colliculi called as corpora quadrigemina in the posterior aspect, and in the lateral aspect of the midbrain, I have what is called as the superior and inferior brachia. On the lateral aspect, we have the superior and inferior brachia. The superior brachium passes from the superior colliculus to lateral geniculate body and optic tract. Inferior, of course, connects the inferior colliculus to medial geniculate body. Now, how do we remember this? Superior brachium connects superior colliculus to LGB, lateral geniculate body. Inferior connects inferior colliculus to MGB, medial geniculate body. Lateral geniculate body is related to light. Light mane visual tract, isn't it? Light means visual tract. L for L, lateral geniculate body to light, light meaning optic tract, that is visual tract. Whereas medial geniculate body is MGB, M for music. Music means MGB, connects the inferior colliculus to medial geniculate body. Okay, so the superior brachium, where is it present? It is present on the lateral surface and it is running in an anterolateral direction. It passes from superior colliculus to LGB and the LGB and the optic tract. Inferior brachium connects the inferior colliculus to MGB. Then, in the midline below the inferior colliculus, trochlear nerve emerges. Guys, remember, trochlear nerve is the only nerve that is emerging from the posterior surface. All the other cranial nerves, they emerge from the anterior surface. Whereas trochlear nerve is the only nerve that emerges from the posterior surface. You can see beautifully here. These are the superior and inferior colliculi. You can see the superior colliculus gets connected with the MGB by the brachia of the superior and inferior colliculi. You can see here. And this is where the trochlear nerve is coming from. The inferior part of the inferior colliculus is where the trochlear nerve is coming. Again, guys, you don't even have to memorize the nerve which comes in this particular surface, because what am I talking about? Here I'm talking about the posterior surface. In the entire CNS, there's only one nerve that comes from the posterior surface, and that is my trochlear nerve. Is there anything that you have to memorize over here? Of course not. What you need to remember is only two things. In the posterior surface, what I have is corpora quadrigemina, which is divided by this cruciate kind of structure, the grooves which are both horizontal as well as vertical. The superior colliculi, you have MGB. Inferior colliculi, you have LGB. In the inferior surface, we have trochlear nerve. That's it. Okay, this is the structure that I'm talking about. I've removed the cerebellum here, and I can see that these are the two colliculi, and see how the trochlear nerve is emerging. And if you look further down, you can see here that all of the other nerves are actually coming from anterior surface. This is suppose if you look at this to be the midbrain, trochlear nerve comes from posterior surface, while all the other nerves, they come out from the anterior surface, as it is clearly visible in this diagram. Okay, yeah. And if I just have to explain what things do we see here, this is the thalamus. Okay, and this is the hypothalamus, and this is the midbrain structures. Then we have the pons here, then we have the medulla oblongata here. You can see clearly so many nerves that are coming from this. Okay, now let's talk about the anterior surface of the midbrain. Until now, what I was teaching you, I was teaching you about the I had the specimen in my hand, I removed the cerebellum, and this is what I was looking at, corpora quadrigemina. Now turn the brainstem. Turn the brainstem around and see what is there in the anterior surface. On the anterior surface, what is there is a depression which is called as interpeduncular fossa. What do we have in the anterior surface? Excuse me, guys. In the anterior surface, what I have is a deep depression in the midline called as interpeduncular fossa. First question, why the name interpeduncular fossa? Because on either sides, it is bounded by cerebral peduncles. Second question, why are they called as cerebral peduncles? It is because the descending tracts from the cerebrum passes through this peduncles. Descending tracts from the cerebrum passes through these peduncles. Okay. Repeating again, held the specimen in your hand, removed cerebellum, looking at the posterior surface. Now I turned the brainstem around. I turned it around. Now I'm looking at the anterior surface of the brainstem. What am I seeing? I'm seeing an interpeduncular fossa. On either side, I have the cerebral peduncles, which are called as crus cerebri. These cerebral peduncles are called so because they contain the descending tracts from the cerebral cortex. Understood? Are you getting an orientation as to which part of the brain I'm talking about? If you're getting, well and good. Okay. If you're not getting, go through the class again. You will understand what exactly I'm talking about. Now, what is this fossa? This fossa is called as interpeduncular fossa, and it has something called as posterior perforated substance. Now, guys, whenever you hear about the word perforating substance, whether it is anterior or posterior, it is there for one sole reason that, let's say, I have different arteries that supply the surface of brain. Suppose if you consider this to be the brain, now I have arteries that come over here and they supply the cerebral cortex. Now, what about the deeper structures? What about some structure that is present over here in the deeper structures which are present in the posterior surface, or maybe deeper to the cerebral cortex itself? How are the blood supplies going to go? It cannot just go and pierce any structure it wants to, isn't it? That is why we have these structures called as perforated substances, in which you actually have the small fenestrations, actually have the small cutie perforations through which the arteries enter. They go deeper and they supply the deeper structures. Understanding? In the interpeduncular fossa, I have something called as posterior perforated substance, through which posterior cerebral artery actually perforates, goes deeper and supplies the structures. So whenever you hear the word perforated substance, whether it is anterior or posterior, anterior perforated substance is in the cribriform plate, something related to olfactory pathway, if you remember. Whereas the posterior perforated substance is present in the interpeduncular fossa, and in which the many small blood vessels actually perforate, and then they go and supply the deeper structures. Okay, in the anterior surface, I have something called as interpeduncular fossa, which is bounded by two cerebral peduncles called as crus cerebri. Why are they called so? Because they contain the descending tracts from the cerebrum. And what do we have in the interpeduncular fossa is the posterior perforating substance. And why is it called as perforated substance? Is because of the fenestrations present. Why do we have the fenestrations? Is because for the arteries to go and supply the deeper structures. Understood? Yes. Finally, then let's go into second point in the interpeduncular fossa. Guys, remember one thing, in the entire brainstem, I have the cranial nerves that come out. Cranial nerves come out from this brainstem, correct? Which cranial nerves come from which part of the brainstem? Third, fourth, fifth comes from the midbrain. 6, 7, 8 comes from pons. 9, 10, 11, 12 comes from the medulla oblongata. 1 and 2, it's more anterior. Okay. Whereas 3, 4, 5, midbrain. 6, 7, 8, pons. 9, 10, 11, 12, medulla oblongata. Okay. If there is any problem in the midbrain, you will have only 3, 4, 5 nerves that get affected. Correct? There are certain syndromes, brainstem syndromes that we talk about. In the midbrain syndromes, you have only 3, 4, 5 nerves that will get affected. Whereas in the pontine syndromes, you'll have 6, 7, 8 nerves. And in the medullary syndromes, you'll have 9, 10, 11, 12. Suppose you have a patient who comes to you with loss of, let's say, his oculomotor nerve is damaged, his third nerve is damaged, he has down and out pupil. You must have done this in your physiology sections, isn't it? The third nerve, it causes down and out pupil. Some patient of yours comes to the emergency with a down and out pupil, and his pyramidal tract is affected, and the first thing that should come to your mind is, I am suspecting that the third nerve is getting affected. And where is the third nerve coming from? It is coming from the midbrain. This is a midbrain syndrome. Suppose a patient comes to you with facial paralysis and pyramidal tract involvement, having hemiplegia. Where is the nerve coming from? Seventh nerve is coming from pons. Okay. 3, 4, 5 was from midbrain. 6, 7, 8 is coming from pons in the pontomedullary junction. So his seventh nerve is getting involved along with pyramidal tract. Yes, now I am suspecting a pontine syndrome, pontine stroke. Suppose some patient comes to you with a loss of gag reflex, or the tongue deviated to the opposite side, or 9, 10, 11, 12 nerve involvement and pyramidal tract involvement. You're obviously going to suspect medullary syndromes. Obviously, you're suspecting medullary syndromes. So a technique, this is a slightly a higher concept. You will study this in your medicine classes, but this orientation you should have. 3, 4, 5 is coming from the midbrain. 6, 7, 8 is coming from the pons. 9, 10, 11, 12 is coming from the, the medulla oblongata, and 1 and 2 is much more anterior. Okay. Now the oculomotor nerve, the third nerve, it actually emerges from a groove on the medial side of the crus cerebri and passes forward in the lateral wall of the cavernous sinus. Okay. Now the oculomotor nerve, as I said, 3, 4, 5 comes from the midbrain. So one nerve you've already learned, where is it coming from? It is emerging from a groove on the medial side of the cerebral peduncle. That means it is one of the contents of the interpeduncular fossa. Guys, look at this. This is the beautiful picture I have. This is the posterior perforated substance, and this exactly is the interpeduncular fossa. And this is the oculomotor nerve, as you can see, which is coming out. This is the interpeduncular fossa, the triangular structure I'm pointing out, and it is containing the posterior perforated substance along with the oculomotor nerve. And what do I have over here? These eminence, these projections, these are the mammillary body. Mammillary body is a it's a structure of the limbic system in which the structures from the fornix enter into the white matter from the fornix enter into the mammillary body, which we'll be studying later in our next, in our later classes. We'll be dealing with this limbic system and the Purpose circuit as well. But look at this orientation, guys. So what am I exactly seeing here? I've held the midbrain like this. I was looking at the posterior surface. Now I've turned around. Now I'm seeing this is how the midbrain looks in an anterior view, in the ventral view. What am I seeing? Posterior perforated substance, interpeduncular fossa, oculomotor nerve. And you can clearly see how the trochlear nerve is coming from behind like this, from posteriorly. All the other nerves that you can see which are emerging from the pons as well as the medulla is anterior, except for one nerve which is posterior. Whenever you talk about the posterior aspect of midbrain, you don't even have to memorize, because you know what nerves come from midbrain: 3, 4, and 5. 4 is already sorted. Correct. 4 is already sorted, isn't it? 4 is already sorted because it comes from the posterior aspect, and the third nerve is already coming from here. Okay. Yeah. Then internal structure of the midbrain. Suppose if I'm cutting the midbrain into two, it is divided into dorsal and the ventral parts by the aqueduct of Sylvius. The dorsal portion is what is called as the tectum, and tectum obviously contains the 4 colliculi called as corpora quadrigemina. Superior and inferior colliculi. Superior is related to light, so LGB. Inferior is related to music, so MGB. Simple. Now I am talking about the 2 cerebral peduncles in the ventral aspect. I am talking about this aspect now. Okay. These 2 are the crus cerebri of the midbrain. Okay. The crus cerebri are the cerebral peduncles, which is the anterior aspect of the midbrain. Now, what are these cerebral peduncles? They consist of 2 thick nervous cords that extend from the cerebral cortex to the so that is cerebral cortex, which is the forebrain, to the pons. That's it. Peduncles are nothing but these are the structures through which different tracts pass through. That's it. Here we have the descending tracts from the cerebrum to the pons, which come through the cerebral peduncles. As simple as this. But this cerebral peduncle divides into 3 parts, which is the midbrain tegmentum, which is the dorsal part, crus cerebri in the ventral part, substantia nigra, which is a pigmented gray matter. I hope what happens when there is a degeneration of substantia nigra is a question to you. Question number 3. Substantia nigra is a part of which part of brain? Number 2. When the neurons in the substantia nigra degenerate, what happens? These 2 questions you will answer me in the next class. Then in the aqueduct of Sylvius that connects the 3rd and the 4th ventricles, they are of course lined by the ependymal cells and surrounded by the central gray matter. Okay. Now, cross section of the midbrain. Suppose if this is the midbrain, I am going to be taking sections like this. Sections like this to study the internal structures. Okay. What happens when I cut it like this, guys? I can see what is present inside. When I cut it like this, I can see what is present inside. How am I taking these 2 sections? One at the upper level, one at the lower level. One at the level of superior colliculi, one at the level of inferior colliculi. As simple as it gets. Now, what do we see when I take a section at the superior level of superior colliculi? Suppose if this is the midbrain, if I take a section like this At the level of superior colliculi, what structures do I see? If I take a section over here at the inferior level of colliculi, what structures do I see? This is the whole point that I'm trying to make. Okay. First, what do I see? I told you what nerves come from until now. What are the different nerves that we track? We tracked oculomotor nerve and we tracked trochlear nerve. Correct? Now, obviously, if oculomotor nerve is coming from here, I should have oculomotor nucleus as well. Agree? So, cranial nerve nuclei, obviously, I'm going to be having oculomotor nucleus and Edinger-Westphal nucleus. So, what is Edinger-Westphal nucleus? Edinger-Westphal nucleus is also related to oculomotor nucleus, but it only has the preganglionic fibers of the parasympathetic nervous system, which which will go and relay in the ciliary ganglion and they innervate the this sphincter pupillae and muscles of iris, the dilatus pupil and the basically the muscles that help in the pupillary reflex. Correct? So this Edinger-Westphal nucleus, which contains the preganglionic fibers of the parasympathetic nervous system, relay into the ciliary ganglion. I hope you know about different ganglions. Ciliary ganglion, otic ganglion. I hope you have a fair idea about these ganglions and what nerves relay over there. And I mean, it's a very, very important concept. I hope you are aware of it. Okay. Yeah. So the what cranial nerve nuclei will be present? Obviously, oculomotor nerve nucleus and the Edinger-Westphal nerve nucleus. Then I also have the mesencephalic nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. Guys, trigeminal nerve is a very big nerve and trigeminal nucleus is also a very big nucleus. Trigeminal is a mixed nerve, meaning it has both sensory as well as motor components. The sensory component is what is called as the mesencephalic nucleus, which is present in the midbrain at the level of the superior colliculus. Now, at the level of superior colliculi, you obviously have superior colliculus and very important structure called as red nucleus. Okay, red nucleus. Then there are some motor tracts also. You can write any tract that comes to your mind, like corticospinal, corticonuclear, temporopontine, frontopontine, MLF, and so on and so forth. You can write any tract that comes to your mind. Okay, in the transverse section, this is how the midbrain looks like. When I take a section like this, at the level of the superior colliculus, these are the different structures that we see. Now, see, what do I see? Start from the superior. Always start from the top. From top meaning superior. First, what I see is the superior colliculus. Then, come a little down. What do I have over here? Oculomotor nucleus. Okay. After oculomotor nucleus, what do I have? You have medial longitudinal fasciculus. Come a little below. This big red structure is the red nucleus and the fibers that come out is actually the rubrospinal tract and the decussation is taking place over here. Then come to the crus cerebri area. I told you the crus cerebri area, it divides into the, come back here. You see, each cerebral peduncle gets divided into three parts: tegmentum, substantia nigra, crus cerebri. Okay. Now look over here. The upper part is the tectum part. This is the tegmentum part. This is the crus cerebri part. Okay. This is the superior peduncle that I am talking, cerebral peduncle, isn't it? Sorry. This is the cerebral peduncle, which is divided into this tectum, tegmentum, and the crus cerebri part. Now come to the crus cerebri part. What do we have in the cerebral peduncle? I obviously have all the motor tracts. Now, what do you expect to see in this area, in this aspect? You obviously will see anything and everything that is related to motor fibers. Correct? Here you have the frontopontine fibers. Here you have the corticospinal and corticonuclear. Then we have the substantia nigra and the temporopontine fibers. Okay. While you are making this diagram also, apply the logic, guys. At the level of superior colliculus, first, what do I see is the superior colliculus. Then I see the cerebral aqueduct. Then Even if you don't remember cerebral aqueduct, let it be. First, write the superior colliculus, then write the oculomotor nerve. This you obviously remember. Along with oculomotor nerve, immediately write off the medial longitudinal fasciculus. After you write the medial longitudinal fasciculus, write the red nucleus. You've already covered 4 different structures. After this, write the substantia nigra and this entire part which indicates the different motor fibers, descending tracts, which is my crus cerebri, the cerebral peduncle. Okay, these are the different structures that you come across in the at the level of superior colliculus, which is a very important question, and you will be asked to write a diagram as well as label it. Okay, yes. Now let's just talk about little bit about all these different structures. First, I have the superior colliculus. Now, what is superior colliculus? It's a very large nucleus of the gray matter that lies in the upper level of the midbrain. Obviously, here no points to guess. Where is it present? It's present on the upper level of midbrain. And superior colliculus was related to LGB, L for light. Okay. Now, superior colliculus forms a part of the visual reflexes. I'll tell you guys. Suppose if I clap my hand like this, okay, you immediately see. You immediately move your neck. When your neck moves, your eyeballs also move. How is this happening? How is this actually happening? It is happening because of the superior colliculus. And also, guys, see how closely superior colliculus is related to all of these different structures that are important in vision. Example, if you look at this particular diagram, if you look at this particular diagram, let us say somewhere here I have the superior colliculus. It is so closely related to the optic nerve, optic chiasma, oculomotor nerve, isn't it? Look at how efficient the system is. Look at how beautifully the god has created it. When you talk about superior colliculus, you don't even have to memorize because you know it is something related to vision. Why? Because look at all the surrounding structures here, guys. You don't even have to memorize it. Look at all the surrounding structures. You have optic nerve, optic chiasma, optic tract, oculomotor nerve coming in. Do you even have to memorize it? Of course not. Whenever somebody asks you about superior colliculus, you have to teach them ki, are yaar, it is near to all the structures that are responsible for vision. Obviously, it helps in visual reflexes. What is it connected to? It is connected to LGB by the superior brachium. It receives its afferents from the optic nerve, visual cortex, and the spinotactile tract, and gives its efferent fibers and it forms the tectospinal and the tectobulbar tracts. That is what is responsible for the reflex movement of eyes and head in response to any stimuli. When you move your head like this, your eyeballs also move, and this integration is taking place in the superior colliculus. As I said earlier, we have different parts in the brain. What exactly are they doing? They are integrating the information. They are getting information from so many different parts of the brain. They integrate it and they tell the cerebral cortex, they give a proper information to the cerebral cortex for it to make a decision. One of those structures is a superior colliculus, which is doing this job. Okay. Then oculomotor nucleus. Oculomotor nucleus is situated in the gray matter close to the median plane, just posterior to MLF. Okay. These fibers, they pass anteriorly through the red nucleus and they emerge on the medial side of the crus cerebri in the interpeduncular fossa as the oculomotor nerve. Simple, you don't have to remember anything. Just you have to know the nucleus is present in the midbrain and oculomotor nerve, it emerges in the interpeduncular fossa. If you know this much, it's enough. Now, the afferent pathway for the light reflex ends in the pretectal nucleus. What is it? It's just a small group of neurons which is situated very close to superior colliculus. After they relay in the pretectal nucleus, the fibers pass to the presynaptic parasympathetic nucleus of oculomotor nerve, which is the Edinger-Westphal. Correct? I've told you already that Edinger-Westphal nucleus contains the preganglionic parasympathetic fibers. In light reflex, guys, what is light reflex? You shine a beam of light and my pupil constricts. What is the afferent? The afferents from this through the through the optic nerve ends into the pretectal nucleus. From the pretectal nucleus, these fibers, after they relay in the pretectal, then they go into the parasympathetic nucleus of oculomotor nerve. What is the effect of parasympathetic nervous system on your pupils? What they happen? They constrict, isn't it? Sympathetic, they dilate. Parasympathetic, they constrict. The constriction is called as meiosis. The dilatation is called as mydriasis. Who brings about meiosis? Parasympathetic nervous system, isn't it? So what nucleus is responsible for this is the Edinger-Westphal nucleus. Whenever you see a tiger, for example, there is a snake that comes in front of you, you suddenly open your eyes and suddenly the pupils also dilate for more light to go in and for you to be able to make you see the snake properly. So sympathetic system is what brings about the dilation and the parasympathetic is brings about constriction. So when you shine a beam of light, the pupillary constriction is taking place because of parasympathetic nervous system, and which is the nucleus of this is the Edinger-Westphal nucleus. Okay, then you may go through this entirely. Is this a topic in physiology which you will go through, light reflex as well as my entire optic pathway. Okay, then we have the red nucleus. Red nucleus is related to movement, that is, it is related with motor supply. This is a rounded mass in the gray matter situated between the aqueduct and the substantia nigra. It is called as red nucleus because it has a presence of an iron containing pigment in the cytoplasm. Okay, it receives its efferents from the cerebral cortex through the corticospinal fibers, correct? That also from the cerebellum through the superior cerebellar peduncle and the lentiform nucleus and the subthalamic nucleus of the basal ganglia. The efferent fibers, they leave the red nucleus and pass to the spinal cord through rubrospinal tract, and they also help in the reticular formation through the rubroreticular tract in the thalamus and the substantia nigra. So efferents are all of this. You don't have to know, but red nucleus is a very important 5-marker question which can be asked. Here is another diagram for you guys. Superior colliculus, cerebral aqueduct, oculomotor, red nucleus. These are the structures you will have to concentrate here. Okay, one after the other you will have to write it, one after the other you will have to name it. Okay, and you may, if you want, you can of course expand it in your examination if you're confident. Then at the level of inferior colliculus, what are we going to see? Right now, superior colliculus, third nerve is already over. What is left out? Fourth and the fifth. In the fifth, I only have the mesencephalic, that is a sensory aspect. Okay. Now, the cranial nerve nuclei, the trochlear nucleus and the mesencephalic nucleus of trigeminal nerve and the inferior colliculus is present. Motor tracts, obviously, whatever was there will be here also now. Whatever that was coming down, if it was there in midbrain, it will have to, at the level of superior colliculus, they'll have to be present in the inferior colliculus, at the level of inferior colliculus also. But you may find some other new additions here. Okay, you may find some other new tracts here, but otherwise it is the same. Whatever that you would have seen, the motor segments in the superior colliculus will invariably be present in the inferior colliculus as well. Okay, but look at the different structures that you are seeing. What two nerves that we spoke about? First is the trochlear nerve and the trochlear nucleus. You can clearly see how it is emerging in as the posterior nerve, correct? Then again, I have the cerebral aqueduct. Then I have the MLF also. And I have the inferior colliculus here. In the crus cerebri part, same frontopontine, corticospinal, temporopontine. But here you also have this lemniscus. Okay, also have the lemniscus. Only thing that you will have to know here is the trochlear nucleus. Okay, trochlear nucleus. You're not seeing the third nerve nuclei because it is already done. Third nerve nuclei was present at the level of superior colliculus and the oculomotor came out of it. Then, of course, here you have the decussation of the superior cerebellar peduncles. Superior cerebellar peduncles. Okay, another diagram. Just to show, trochlear nerve, inferior colliculus. This is the aqueduct containing the CSF, the mesencephalic nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. This is the lateral lemniscus. Okay, trigeminal, spinal, and medial lemniscus. All of these lemniscus together is present here. Then these are the different motor structures that are present at the level of the inferior colliculus. Now, inferior colliculus is something related to audio, right? It receives its many fibers, terminal fibers of the lateral lemniscus, and through the inferior brachium, it gets connected into the medial geniculate body. Okay, and mesencephalic nuclei is present lateral to the cerebral aqueduct. Then, of course, I have the trochlear nucleus situated in the central gray matter, which is close to the median plane, just posterior to the medial longitudinal fasciculus. Okay, while when you're writing the diagram, first make the both inferior and superior colliculus, there is not much of a difference. Instead of red nucleus, here you have the decussation of superior cerebellar peduncles, and you don't have oculomotor nucleus here. Otherwise, rest everything remains all more or less the same. So first make this diagram, this outline. First make the colliculi, then make the cerebral aqueduct. Around this, make fourth and the fifth nuclei, and MLF, instead of red nucleus, make this decussation, then write the lemniscus and the motor aspect. That's it. Simple, and you're done with the diagram. Then, the decussation of the superior cerebellar peduncles occupies the central part of the tegmentum. Okay, reticular formation is smaller than that of the pons. We don't have to, go in detail about this. Then we have the medial lemniscus. What is medial lemniscus? It ascends posterior to the substantia nigra, and it mainly carries the proprioceptive fine touch sensations from the opposite side of the body. We can do a detailed session on the ascending and descending tracts, but just know that medial lemniscus carries the fine touch and the proprioception. Okay. Lateral lemniscus is located posterior to the trigeminal lemniscus, and it carries the auditory sensations. Okay. Then I have the spinal lemniscus. Sorry. Spinal lemniscus is situated lateral to the medial lemniscus, and it carries the pain, temperature, and crude touch sensations. So what is the part of tract that I am talking about? Anterior spinothalamic tract, isn't it? Spinothalamic tract, what sensations does it carry? Pain, temperature, and crude touch. What do my medial lemniscus? Medial lemniscus is the which tract? You will have to know this in complete detail, guys. I mean, there is no way that you are going to get confused when you're talking about ascending and descending tracts. Today, I'd not like to go in detail about these tracts, but know one thing, that knowing the tracts in and out is going to make your life so easy, not just in your first year, but also in your residency. Okay, anterior spinothalamic tract and lateral spinothalamic tract, these anterolateral spinothalamic tract, and these are the tracts that you cannot afford to go wrong in. Okay, you definitely cannot go wrong when it comes to ascending and descending tracts. Descending tract, especially the pyramidal tract. Ascending tracts, all of these different, there are many tracts. 2-3 tracts are important for you, which carries all this proprioception, vibration, fine touch sensations, and you have the pain, temperature, crude touch sensations, and all of these tracts are extremely important. You should know the level of decussation. You should know which sensations they carry. You should know at the spinal level whether the decussation happens or not, where exactly the decussation is taking place, what are the different the first order, second, third order neurons, then what sensations do they carry, different types of neurons. All of this is very important. It's a physiology topic. I'd not like to delve deep into it, but yeah, trigeminal lemniscus carries the general sensation from the opposite side of head and face. Okay, all 4 lemniscus which is present here are basically related to sensory aspect. Okay, substantia nigra is a very large motor nucleus which is a part of the basal ganglia. Okay, substantia nigra is a very big motor nucleus that is related to which is a part of the basal ganglia, that is very important when it comes to muscle tone, and it's connected to cerebral cortex, spinal cord, hypothalamic, and basal nuclei. Then what is crus cerebri? Crus cerebri is nothing but My cerebral peduncles that contains the important descending tracts separated by tegmentum by the substantia nigra. Then corticospinal tract and corticonuclear fibers, they occupy the middle two-thirds of the crust. Frontopontine, they occupy the medial part of the crust, and the temporopontine occupy the lateral part of the crust. All these descending tracts connect the cerebral cortex to the anterior gray column cells of the spinal cord, the cranial nerve nuclei, pons, and the cerebellum. Okay. Yes, so this is the diagram. Again, I'm putting so many diagrams of different shades for you to understand. All right. Yes, so that's it for today's class. The take home message, the take home homework is number one. We are studying Brainstem to understand how the integration of the information takes place and how the information gets passed from one structure to another. For example, let me tell you, if I'm talking about this particular spinal thalamus, so spinal lemniscus, which is a part of the anterolateral spinothalamic pathway, which consists of the pain, temperature, and crude touch from the opposite side. Suppose if I have any pain or any burn or something, whether in my left hand, so the neurons which come from the left hand, they go all the way to all the way from spinal cord, and then they ascend and ascend and ascend, then they reach the medulla oblongata, then they go to the pons, then they go to the midbrain. From midbrain they enter the thalamus, and then the enters into the cerebral cortex, where the pain perception takes place. This spinal lemniscus can be seen at the level of this inferior colliculus. Okay, this is how the information is getting passed, and it is visible. It can be studied at this level of the inferior colliculus. Okay, that's the whole point of this class, as to know how the information gets passed from the spinal cord to the cortex, from cortex to the spinal cord, and to the peripheries. So midbrain plays a very important role in that. Okay, these two sections at the level of the inferior and superior colliculus is very important diagram, as well as what different structures do we see here. Okay, I hope this class was useful to you. I hope you've understood and have gotten an orientation about what brainstem is, what midbrain is, and in the coming sections I'll try to integrate as many things as I can. If you're interested to know more about these brainstem syndromes, you can let me know. We can probably have a very quick session of 15 to 30 minutes about brainstem syndromes, which is very interesting. May not be important at this level, you will not need it, but if you're interested, we can definitely have a session on that. But do go through these diagrams and do go through this information again. And I hope you found this class useful. And if you want to reach out to us, you can reach out to us across all the social media handles. And I wish you all the very best. Keep studying, keep working hard. There is no substitution to hard work, and repetition is the mother of all skills. Okay, I wish you all the very best. Good night, guys. Thank you so much.